Grace and peace. Welcome to Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative YouTube channel. I'm your host, Apostle Cheryl. Today's topic is going to be domestic violence during pregnancy. Domestic violence during pregnancy. Now, before we get started, I'm going to give you an opportunity to partner with us. Check down here for the subscribe button. Make sure that you subscribe. You can check the description box for many ways that you can support us in our quest to end domestic violence. Many ways that you can partner with us, okay? So check out the description box after this video. Well, while you're down there, click the subscribe button and then make sure you click the bell for notifications. This way you'll be notified every week when we upload a new video. We typically upload every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, okay? Thanks for taking a few seconds to take care of that. Now, let's get started. I'm going to be sharing some appalling, horrific, mind-blowing facts and statistics with you today regarding domestic violence during pregnancy and its frequency and its impact, and why we should really be concerned about it, okay? And hopefully we can dispel some myths that you may have heard floating around out there, and replace them with facts. And it is our hope that this will make us more sensitive regarding loved ones, friends and associates who may be pregnant and experiencing domestic violence. Domestic violence is associated with miscarriage, late prenatal care, stillbirths, preterm births, and fetal injury, including bruising, broken and fractured bones, stab wounds, and low birth weight. I'm going to say that again. Domestic violence or intimate partner violence during pregnancy is associated with miscarriage, late prenatal care, stillbirth, preterm birth, fetal injury, including bruising, broken and fractured bones, stab wounds, and low birth weight. Homicide is the second leading cause of injury-related deaths in pregnant and postpartum women in the United States. So we're talking about pregnant women and women who have recently given birth. Pregnant, abused women are less likely to report abuse or to leave their abuser because of the added financial constraints and housing concerns. If they leave, where are they going? Pregnant, right? If they leave, what financial resources will they have at their disposal? And so it's a very complicated situation. And as you've heard us say previously, domestic violence is so much more complicated than just leave. It's so much more complicated than that. And so it's our hope that we can continue to educate the public, and even victims and even survivors regarding the dynamics that are associated with domestic violence or intimate partner violence. Partner violence in a relationship increases the chance of unintended pregnancy. All right? Partner violence in a relationship increases the chances of unintended pregnancy. That means that the victim did not intend to get pregnant. The violence can take place in such a way, whether it's emotional, physical, verbal abuse or whatever, threats, sexual assault, wherein the victim is even manipulated into having unprotected sex, which results in pregnancy, either because they've been manipulated emotionally or they've been threatened or due to trauma bonding. There's so many dynamics at work here. Now, according to the National Institutes of Health, DV affects 300,000 pregnant women every year in the United States, right? And this is across all of those barriers that we use to separate and differentiate ourselves from one another. So this is across religion, educational level, financial level, the socioeconomic status that a victim has, across all of these barriers, just as domestic violence does in the general population, it affects 300,000 pregnant women every year in the US alone. Okay? As we've discussed previously, it includes physical abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, all of those coercive control tactics that we've talked about at great length here on the channel are evident as well. And when domestic violence or intimate partner violence has crept into a relationship, once it's in a relationship, it often has the impact of causing a delay in prenatal care. Now, you might say, well, now why would it cause a delay in prenatal care? Because if a victim is frequently being bruised and battered, then how do you then present to a medical provider? How do you explain the injuries, right? And so that isolation piece sets in and it takes place. And so prenatal care can be delayed, which is not desirable even in a woman who is pregnant and not experiencing domestic violence. Prenatal care is incredibly important to ensure the health of the mother and the baby. The other thing may be that the prenatal care is delayed because the abuser refuses to permit the victim to seek care because they don't want the abuse to become a public matter or a criminal matter. Okay. So, again, domestic violence and intimate partner violence is a risk factor for delayed prenatal care. All right. Now, according to the World Health Organization, other impacts on a pregnant woman could be negative coping skills, the development of negative coping skills. What is a coping skill? It's something that you embrace, that you undertake in order to help you to cope, to help you to deal with life, to help you to deal with stress. And typically when you think of a coping skill, you want to think of something, that is healthy, but there are negative coping skills as well. So, what am I talking about? In the instance of a woman who is pregnant and experiencing intimate partner violence, it's not unheard of for her to develop negative coping skills, whether it be abuse of prescription medications, abuse of illegal drugs and alcohol, um, abuse of any substance, mind altering substance that may help to numb her or to cause her to feel less anxiety. If she's prescribed mental health medications, maybe taking more of that than she should be taking in order to try to mitigate the stress that she's experiencing due to the violence that is present in that relationship. So, risk taking behaviors may result. Smoking, and as I said previously, the rates of preterm labor and low birth weight, miscarriage, and even abortion. Sometimes women dealing with the intimate partner violence may consider abortion when previously abortion would not have been something that they considered at all. Now, according to the National Resource Center for domestic violence kills more pregnant women each year than any other cause. Now, women are aware, by and large, that being pregnant and childbirth are one of the most dangerous things that we will ever endure in life. That it is incredibly risky for the mother, and certainly minority women have a higher rate of dying during labor and delivery, or immediately following delivery. And so when intimate partner violence is introduced, it just really, really, really exacerbates what we already know about how risky and how dangerous pregnancy can be for a woman. So, pregnant adolescents and women, it's been found, with unintended pregnancies are at an increased risk. They are 2 to 4 times more likely to experience physical violence, and 50 to 75% of women abused before pregnancy are abused during pregnancy. Now, let's just look at that. 50 to 75% of women who were abused before pregnancy will be abused during pregnancy. Now, the flip side of that same coin is there have been cases where pregnancy seemed to cause an abatement or a decrease or a hiatus in the physical aggression, in the physical violence, because the abuser did not want to harm his unborn child in some cases. Now, that's a two-edged sword because if a woman is pregnant, she's in an abusive situation, and the violence decreases during pregnancy, it can cause some women to decide to be pregnant as frequently as possible in order to experience that hiatus and that break from the violence. That, coupled with the trauma bonding that has already taken place, is an awful lot for a woman to deal with. Now, here's the thing. There's no guarantee that being pregnant is going to cause a hiatus. There's no guarantee. But there have been instances where that has been reported. Now, taking it a step further, often once the pregnancy is over and the baby has been delivered, the abuse returns. And sometimes it has increased postpartum. Okay, so why am I sharing this? Because I want us to understand the dilemmas that a pregnant woman faces, on top of the trauma bonding and the ongoing gaslighting and the threats and the intimidation and maybe the stalking and the strangulation and all that. All of these things that you deal with in an abusive relationship anyway are exacerbated oftentimes during pregnancy. Okay? Pregnant homicide victims are more likely to be killed with a firearm. And we've already shared in previous videos that having a firearm in the home increases the likelihood of a homicide by 500%. Okay, so having a firearm in the home in a relationship where abuse has taken place previously or is taking place currently during pregnancy is incredibly dangerous. All right. About 72% of US women aged 15 to 44 receive at least one reproductive health care visit per year. So 72% of women ages 15 to 44 receive help with their reproductive health. They see a gynecologist, they see an obstetrician, or whatever, 72%. But it's been discovered that less than half of healthcare providers routinely screen for intimate partner violence or domestic violence. There aren't many of them that literally screen specifically for that, okay? Despite the fact that 72% of women see a reproductive health care provider, usually once a year, okay? So here's another statistic that I found pretty startling. 47% of DV homicide and attempted homicide victims were seen by a healthcare provider the year before their death or attack. So there's a great opportunity for intervention. There's a great opportunity for referral to DV advocate support groups, et cetera, et cetera. When a woman comes in, she's not very likely to bring this up on her own. She's not very likely to bring it up on her own. And oftentimes the abuser may be sitting right there with her. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence reports that about 25% of women who are being abused also report being forced to become pregnant. Being forced to become pregnant. The World Health Organization says that physical, sexual, and psychological abuse during pregnancy accompanies increased depression, increased anxiety, etc. in pregnant women. Decreased breastfeeding is reported and increased difficulty bonding with the baby. So it's not unusual for a woman to have difficulty bonding with her new baby if she's been subjected to abuse. during the pregnancy or prior to the pregnancy. Um, and that's unfortunate because that's important, right? In early life, and an inability to bond can cause problems down the road in that relationship with mother and child. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we talked about today is the fact that pregnancy, in and of itself, is frequently used by abusers as a form of birth control sabotage. What is birth control sabotage? It's also known as reproductive coercion. Reproductive coercion, okay? And it's a form of coercion. Now, domestic violence in general is riddled with all kinds of coercions, but this is reproductive coercion. Reproductive coercion is defined as a form of coercion where someone manipulates another person's use of birth control, sabotaging their efforts to prevent an unwanted pregnancy. And examples of this might be uh, puncturing a condom, switching out birth control pills and replacing them with fake pills, outright sexual assault, intimidations, verbal threats, things like that. So it's robbing the victim of of her autonomy when it comes to deciding if and when she should become pregnant. Okay, um, and it's done in a manipulative way, verbally, or it's done aggressively with threats and intimidations. Okay, but many abusers use reproductive coercion to control their victim and to cause them to become pregnant, thereby making them more dependent on the abuser. The risk of domestic violence has been known to increase, to escalate immediately postpartum. So, after a woman delivers a baby, um, if she's in an abusive relationship, it's been established, then often the abuse increases. And we hear oftentimes of women who are murdered by their abuser, and their infant is 1 month old, 2 months old, 3 months old, 6 months old. Okay. And so this is something that is very, very concerning, and it's something that really should be taken into consideration, even when safety planning for women who don't feel able to leave the abusive situation as of yet. It's important to understand the lay of the land, right? And what tends to happen in these situations. Now, the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization has found a correlation between large families and intimate partner violence or domestic violence. Previously, it was believed that domestic violence was triggered by having a lot of children, by having a large family, right? And then the stress that accompanies that, the stress that just normally accompanies having a large number of children. But now we understand that in most of these cases, the violence within the relationship, the intimate partner violence or domestic violence, existed in the relationship before the children were even conceived and born. Commonly, contrary to what has been believed for years, the violence predates the birth of the children, often in large families. We're still talking about domestic violence in pregnancy during domestic violence. Homicide, according to the World Health Organization, is the second leading cause of injury related death for pregnant women, only second to car accidents. The only thing that kills pregnant women more than domestic violence is car accidents. Okay? And between 1990 and 2004, 1,300 pregnant women in the United States were murdered. 56% were shot to death. An increased two-thirds were killed during their first trimester. More than two-thirds of the women who were murdered were killed during their first trimester. So that first trimester and then postpartum is really, really, those are two very, very dangerous times for a pregnant woman who is involved in a domestic violence relationship. And of course, the abuse may take a hiatus during the pregnancy, and it very well may not. Okay, and so that is something that we want to be aware of and be mindful of. Okay, now, in one study conducted by Campbell et al., women were asked to speculate. I'm going to leave you with this. Women were asked to speculate on why they thought they were abused during their pregnancies. And the reasons that they provided were grouped into 4 categories. And here they are: jealousy towards the unborn child, anger towards the unborn child, pregnancy specific violence not directed toward the child, and business as usual. Business as usual. We've been talking about pregnancy and domestic violence during pregnancy. It is our hope that this video has been informative and helpful for you. Please share it. Please stay safe out there. Please be safe out there. There's help out here if you are experiencing domestic violence or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence. Educate them and educate yourself so that you can respond in an appropriate manner and in an edifying and supportive manner if someone shares with you that they are experiencing domestic violence. Sometimes knowing what not to say is as important as knowing what to say. This is Apostle Cheryl, and we are Judah's Ward Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative. You be safe out there. Thanks for spending time with us today. Blessings to you.